Welcome, everyone, to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. It is an amazing Thursday. I hope it's sunny wherever you are. Today, the weather is fantastic. When I'm not doing planetary health, I'm working on finding talent, and that is not easy. So, for anyone who thinks it's easy, no, we are trying to find that exact unicorn for the specifications of those hiring managers. We love helping healthcare organizations, leaders, and so if you ever need any help, just reach. We are here on Earth, not Mars. Don't worry about that. And I'd love to help you. But today we have a special guest, Tom. And Tom is leading so many efforts in healthcare. And I don't want to lead but so much on the intro and the bio. I think Tom knows himself so well, but he's going to share some really great things today. But Tom, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we go in?
Absolutely. And Michael, thank you for the invitation to be here and to talk about love and healthcare and so much more. My name is Tom Dahlborg. I'm someone who's lived and worked in healthcare for the last 40 years. I've learned a ton, both as a patient and throughout my roles, and thrilled to be here and to learn and share with you, Michael, and the audience, and to try to, help make things better and do that together.
Well, I'm going to put up, you talk about love in healthcare. You use terms that many have never heard before, such as health caring and values-based care rather than value-based care. Can you maybe share a little bit about that with us?
Absolutely. And in fact, with my quality improvement and research background in mind, I love to quote Avitas Donabedian, who was a physician who studied epidemiology at Harvard and is the founder of the study of quality in healthcare and also medical outcomes research. And so he's most famous for the Donabedian model of care, which you think of structure, process, and outcomes. But what truly resonates for me when I think about his work and his philosophy is actually the following quote. He says, systems awareness and systems design are important for health professionals, but not enough. They are enabling mechanisms only. It is the ethical dimension of individuals that is essential to a system's success. Ultimately, the secret of quality is love. You have to love your patient. You have to love your profession. You have to love your God. If you have love, you can then work backwards to monitor and improve the system. So, Michael, as I mentioned, I've been working in healthcare for 40 years. I started off as a housekeeper, and I was an IV aide, and I was a transport aide. And I remember one time way back when I was a transport aide, I was working for a small community hospital just south of Boston. And I remember I was wheeling this elderly woman who I'd gotten to know over the last couple of weeks or so because she'd been in for so long. And I was wheeling her down for oncology treatment. And I remember at one point, she looked up at me and she grabbed my arm and she said, Tommy, please don't leave me today. I'm scared. She had told me her family wasn't going to be with her on this particular day. And so I remember back then we had beepers and pages and all these, and I contacted the transport office. I said, I need to stay with Mrs. Smith. I need to be here with her. And so, Michael, that was one of those times where I saw, this is love in action. The ability to love one another, her love for me, my love for her, to be in loving right action. And so I remember years later, I was at a very renowned healthcare institution, and we were talking about patient experience. And I told that story, and I told a story about a custodian and how he treated this mother on Easter weekend when her child was in the hospital with sickle cell, being treated for sickle cell. And I looked up at the leaders of this institution, and they looked at me and they said, but what about HCAPs? What I was learning, both from my early days and then to today, is love and caring in many ways are being replaced by numbers, by metrics, and by tactics. So this has informed me in my career in many, many ways. Now, add to that, back in 2001, I was leading a military healthcare organization, and I got sick myself. And I was told I would never work again. I was told get in line for a heart transplant. And through my healing journey, there are really 4 individuals, there's many others, but 4 I'd like to highlight that stand out for me. 4 individuals that truly had love in their hearts, agape love in their hearts, love for humankind, and move into loving right action. So one of those was a flight attendant. I actually had my acute heart episode occurred on a flight from Philly to Seattle. And I remember her looking in my eyes. I remember her name's Mary, holding my hand. I remember her comforting me throughout that entire trip and doing all she could to keep me safe. I remember during my first stay at the hospital after that acute episode, that first night, I'm petrified. I feel lonely. I'm in the dark. I'm in such despair. My bride had to leave me to go take care of our very young children at the time. And I remember Nurse Linda. And Nurse Linda walked into my room, and it was pretty black, pitch black in that room. And she sat at the edge of my bed. And she held my hand. And she looked intently in my eyes. And she said 4 amazing words that I needed to hear at that moment. And those were, Tom, I've got you. That's love in action. Mm-hmm. During my illness, again, I was told I'd never work again. So I needed to go and resign from my leadership position for this military healthcare organization. And I remember Vicky Choate, an incredible nurse who I worked with. And on that day, the day I resigned, I remember her actually walking around her desk and crouching down so we were eye to eye because I was sitting. I couldn't stand very long. And she held my hands and she looked in my eyes and she coached me. She coached me to continue my life journey, that it was not the end, that there were next steps that needed to be taken. And then lastly, I remember my physician, Ben Thompson, and how he engaged my bride and I in every step of the way. No matter how hard or scary, he walked with us. He combined the latest and best research and evidence and wasn't afraid to try new things, and did so because he truly loved and moved that love into love right action. And so, I got healthy. I was blessed. I got healthy, and I owe a lot of it to the love and the actions, the loving right actions of these specific people. So we hear nowadays about the power of compassion and kindness and empathy, of love. Absolutely. And so what I have been doing with this blessing of still being here is seeking to bring love back into healthcare, to transform healthcare to healthcaring, to bring compassion, kindness, and empathy, and connecting with so many different people in the process. And to do so, though, for the sake of love for love's sake, not love because, or not compassion because, or kindness because I want someone to do more for me, or those types of things. Those are unintended consequences. When we truly love as caregivers, as leaders, because we truly love, the unintended consequences, we all benefit. And so that's why I talk about, let's not talk about the value-based care. Let's talk about the values-based care, the values of compassion, kindness, empathy, love. Let's talk about health caring as opposed to health care. Health caring is the blending of science and evidence with the love and compassion and so forth. So that's my journey to this point, and why I seek to do what I do.
Wow. That was a mic drop. That was so powerful, hearing that from you and how you said it and put it. And every one of us in healthcare needs to be reminded by this every day. So it's so powerful to hear that. We can't hear that enough.
And thank you for saying that. And it's amazing. I had a conversation with Dr. Irith Leibowitz, and I think I'm saying her last name correctly, just yesterday, in the work she's doing in Ontario, Canada, about human-centered care, which is, again, about that human connection. So, and then Pentea Vahidi out of California, this engineer and a nurse who is bringing compassion. So she's the science, evidence-driven person who also understands the science, and the evidence points to the importance of compassion in healthcare. It's incredible, Michael, all the different people that are out there, and they're bringing the messages forward. There is such light and hope in the system. And we just have to do it together.
Well, I know you were, one second. You were mentioning when we were talking earlier about the adverse impacts of financial incentives in healthcare. And a lot of times we're hearing right now how many hospitals and health systems have lost so many, like billions this past year. Tell us a little bit about how we've gotten out of track with healthcare, with being so financially driven.
So I've been blessed to do a lot in healthcare, basically because I've been around a long time. Back in the 90s, I was working for Harvard Community Health Plan, then Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and we were developing what we called at that time quality-based incentive programs. We were developed, and then they became pay-for-performance programs. We're now calling them value-based reimbursement or value-based care. From there, in that military healthcare organization I mentioned, doing something similar. And it was through these processes I got to see the unintended consequences of the reliance on financial incentives in caring. And in fact, it was actually my daughter, my youngest daughter, Haley, who shared a story a few years back. She was working in a dining room for an assisted living organization. And Haley loved her people. And she talked about, and I'm making up a name, she talked about Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones, how he recently had lost his wife. And they had been married, I think, like 60-something years. And how he had stopped coming down to the dining room for a long, long time. And then when he did come back, how they reconnected, and how she shared her love for him and he shared his love for her, and how even to this day they still send cards to one another. And so Haley was doing that because she had love in her heart for someone else, for all these people she was caring for in the dining room. The leaders at that organization at one point during her time there said, we need to change things up here. We're going to start giving our team members a financial incentive to pretend to be nice to the residents. And Michael, the research shows, to cut right to the chase, the research shows that when we bring financial incentives into caring modalities, what we're doing is we're removing the heart. We're removing the love, the compassion, the empathy. We're removing the intrinsic calling that we may have, where we want to help someone else because it's the right thing to do, because I truly love this person. And we're replacing it with an extrinsic incentive. We're replacing it with the desire to do something because I'm going to get paid more for it. In quality improvement, we say you build the systems that achieve the outcomes that you get. And in healthcare, that's what we've done. We've created a system which now is reliant on extrinsic financial incentives as opposed to the goodness in someone's heart to do the right thing. And the adverse impact is significant. So as an example, and this came out of JAMA's internal medicine, I believe, they talked about the financial incentives at that time, as a few years back, to improve patient satisfaction. Well, people started to focus on patient satisfaction, keeping patients happy. What happened was the outcomes, good side was, well, emergency department use actually dropped. However, there was a higher inpatient use, there was higher overall healthcare prescription drug costs, and an increase in mortality. So not only are we removing the heart, but we're incentivizing things that lead to adverse outcomes. Well, recently, I was reading just recently, and I posted this on LinkedIn, that in Massachusetts, there's a program now where an organization is giving healthcare systems financial incentives to improve equity. And I'll be honest, I think about that and I'm going, my God, to do the right thing, to improve equity for others, to care and love about all humankind, we need a financial driver to do that. And truth be told, I'm a former CFO. I
Hmm.
built systems too, and I've learned throughout this process. We're going down and continue to be on a pathway to significant harm for all involved within the system as we continue to rely on financial incentives as opposed to the goodness and the love we have for one another. And so, again, this is as I preach the message as much as I
Hmm.
can. And again, I've done it. I've created those same systems. I've learned from my own mistakes. And we have great people. We have good people with good hearts making similar mistakes that I've made. And I continue to make plenty of mistakes. And we have an opportunity, however, to learn from it and do things differently.
Tom, I'm so glad hearing that you were a CFO, that you know that. That to me is so powerful because when we talk about love, I mean, we know there's nothing more powerful, but then it's like, oh, it's one of those guys, no, you know the hard data, you know the numbers, you know what's needing to get done. So I'm so glad to hear that you can say when you're talking to these healthcare CFOs, these senior leaders, that look, I know what you're going through and I've done it too. And then what I would love to hear a little bit is some other data points where you see a little more on these adverse impacts with just, I mean, I imagine there's some even more adverse with misalignment culturally. Sometimes you get so overkill with, I'd love to hear a little more detail on that.
Well, it's interesting. If we think about crossing the quality chasm, which I think came out in 2001, focusing much of that, if not all of that, is around patient safety. Very little improvement in patient safety since that has come out. Very little. And yet we've thrown a ton of money in financial incentives and otherwise in improving patient safety. When we think about patient experience and how much money is being invested in patient, believe you me, patient safety is incredibly important. Patient experience is incredibly important. The methods to get the outcomes we're seeking are wrong. So when we think about patient experience, when we think about H caps and CG caps and these, and again, I've worked in that space. When we think about those things, H caps on a national level has not improved since 2016. And in fact, in the last year has gotten worse.
Mm.
And yet we're investing so much time, money, resources. We have wonderful people with huge hearts that want to do great things. We're getting the outcomes based on the system we created. We have an opportunity to recreate the system.
Yeah, I would love to hear when you're doing your consulting, your leadership, what do you think, how are you helping leaders do this? Tell us a little bit operationally, kind of how you see like a way to kind of help organizations to start moving the needle in the right way.
Some might have been last year. Authority magazine said, "Oh, Tom, you're a disruptor," and I'm like, talking about love and healthcare is a disruptor, is a disruption. That's sad to me. It broke my heart a little bit, and yet it's essential that we do. And so when I talk to leaders, and I was interviewed for something else about the most important thing for a CEO. The most important thing for a CEO, I'd say for any leader, maybe even for all of us, the most important tool is a mirror. We need to be able to look in that mirror, and we need to really be able to see us for who we are, all the goodness that we are, all the wonderful things that we do, and the opportunities to improve. In fact, I worked for one organization where accountability was so critically important. We're holding people accountable, and yet leadership forgot their own mirror. If you think about quality improvement and you think about Deming's work and you think about Deming's 94-6 rule, and for folks that aren't familiar with it, what Deming, who's the godfather of quality, had found in his research was that when a system is broken, as an example, when a system is broken, 94% of the time, the reason is a system-related issue. The system was built wrong. It's a leadership issue. 6% of the time, it's an individual person. And yet, what do we do as leaders? We try to find who did it, and we're going to hold them accountable. Oftentimes, it's a shame and blame game.
Mm-hmm.
So what I coach leaders is, first of all, do your own work. If you truly want a compassionate system, a loving system, a system that's going to embrace equity because it's the right thing to do, first look in the mirror and do your own work. For me, there was a lot of inner child work because I had a lot of trauma in my life and so forth. And it's hard. This is the hard stuff. People think it's the soft stuff. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's the hard stuff. Now, I was talking to a person just the other day, and they said, well, what if they look in the mirror and they actually like what they see? Well, hopefully that means seriously, I hope they do. We all need to learn to, and a lot of us really have a hard time with this, look in the mirror and say, I love you. Mm-hmm. I have all this goodness and I have things to work on, but I love you. I want that. Mm-hmm. If someone looks in the mirror and says, yeah, I'm all about shareholder equity, I'm all about market share, and I'm all about maximizing revenues, and that's it, please don't work in healthcare. Or mm-hmm. find a role in healthcare that we can leverage that analytical, that engineering, that science, those backgrounds that may be a perfect fit within that role. But from a vision, mission, values perspective, if you really want a loving organization, an organization that's going to focus on compassion and then have all those unintended consequences, which are awesome as far as the quintuple aim and people getting better and joy in work for physicians and less burnout and equity and all those pieces, look in the mirror and learn that a way to find that agape love for yourself, for humankind, and then utilize that within your system. So there's all different ways to do it. And there's all different steps in this as well. So with that said, there are so many tools out there. There are so many tools to engage patients and to engage your providers, and they're wonderful tools. When they become a check the box, or I'm doing this to get a better HCAP score, or I'm doing this because I want to increase my market share. When it becomes that's the goal and that's the reason why I'm trying to make a human connection, as my friend Pantea Vahidi says, that takes compassion and makes it an agenda item as opposed to a selfless act. If we really want to improve healthcare, we need those selfless acts.
Tom, I hope you're multiplying and cloning other Toms, because I just get so excited with what you're doing and talking about in healthcare. It seems like everything that your mission and vision is about is we need more diffusion of this idea with, so I hope you're creating an organization that's sustainable. I know do you have a team of people, or where do you see yourself doing this in the next, 5, 10, 20 years? I know you're writing books right now, but I just feel like what you're doing, there needs to be 50 other Toms,
Believe me, we don't want that, but I think it's something. And that's just it. There's a network of amazing people. Darlene Kuna, who is a senior leader in the nursing space for Mercy Health System, she's doing it every day. Irith Leibowitz, who I just mentioned, Pantea Vahidi, who I've mentioned already as well, I think a couple of times, Quint Studa and his work and what he's doing. And there are so many people doing this. Dr. Apurv Gupte with Premier Inc., he's doing this. And everyone has a different lens and a different take, and that's beautiful when love is at the center of it. And so when we all recognize it's about the love, it's about the compassion, it's about the empathy, we can all do great things. So as an organization, my goal is to engage with the people who are already doing amazing things. Mm-hmm. And I learned a long time ago, what works in downtown Boston isn't going to work in northern Maine, isn't going to work in, so my point there is, so the different tools, fantastic. Have an incredible amount of tools in your toolbox. Always have it based on love, beginning with leaders learning how to love themselves, doing their own healing, and then to love others.
Well, we're about halfway through, and I feel like we got to get to one of the other really important things about who you are, Tom, and what you're about, and kind of another story that maybe not everyone knows about. And that's your kind of the driver for your passion and focus also on child health, stopping bullying and amplifying positive childhood experience. I'd love for you to share with our audience more about this and connecting this with healthcare as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. Just a few data points real quick. So 27% of children report being bullied by parents, 37% by teachers, 42% of children are bullied by phys ed teachers and coaches. My son, Tommy, was born with some neurological challenges and was a big kid. And when he was very young, he was bullied predominantly by adults. I remember one day, my bride and I he said, Mommy, Daddy, can I go across and play with my friends? And we said, sure. And so we watched him. He was about 4. And he walked across our driveway into the front yard of our neighbor. And a few of his friends were there. And so we made sure he was safe and with the group. And we saw the parent coming out. And so great, fantastic. And so we closed the door. A few minutes later, my son came running through the door, screaming. And we thought he got hurt. Well, he did. He got hurt emotionally. He got hurt mentally, spiritually. The mother, our neighbor, was letting these children come into their house to play, her house to play. And she got to Tommy and she looked at him and she said, oh no, Tommy, you can't come in. You're too big. Just broke his heart. Absolutely broke his heart. And my bride and I, we didn't know the data at that point. Eventually, I started working for the National Institute for Children's Health Quality, which back in the day was the pediatric division of IHI. And I learned the data. We thought it was an aberration. We thought we were the worst parents ever. So, of course, we were a place of shame and blame of ourselves and of course, anger. And we didn't know what to do. And we made every mistake possible in trying to help our son, who that was one incident, and he had been continued to be bullied and bullied and bullied predominantly by adults. So eventually, when I think he was about 8 years old, he says, Daddy, I want to play basketball. And Michael, I was beside myself. He was not athletic at the time, and I knew a lot of the kids that played. And so, but long story short, we prayed about it, and I kept trying to think about how can we help? And so we used basketball as a tool. The goal of the tool was to help my son learn to love himself just as he was, to love and feel blessed by God for the gifts that he has. And so, long story short, it helped. That helped. Basketball became that tool and helped him. And I started a journal about it. and then I started a blog about it. And I said, Tommy, I said, people start, the family, people in our family, are liking this message. What do you think? Should we share it more broadly? And he looked up at me and he's got these big blue eyes and he's got this dimple when he's happy. And he says, Daddy, he said, let's share it and let's help others. And so long story short, it became a book and I got to share about bullying and what we learned and all the mistakes we made. When Tommy was 23, he came to my wife and I. We were out back in our yard, and he came out to us and he said, Mommy, Daddy, he said at that point, Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. When I was in 4th grade, I put a belt around my neck and I tried to commit suicide. Michael, we had no idea. We had no idea until he told us that. And you talk about humbling again. We already knew we made a lot of mistakes. I already knew I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't realize, I had no idea the pain my son was feeling from what was happening to him. So that's why I have a passion to stop bullying.
Wow.
And the data shows that these things, as we can see with my son, bullying is not of, when I grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts, it was rub some dirt on it. That's what you'd hear, rub some dirt on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that. Bullying has significant impact on the child at that time, at that child as that child is growing and into adulthood, leading to lots of addictions and lots of other things. Not every child, but it can lead in those directions. So since that time, I've been working with incredible people, including my entire family, including my son, to develop programs and to help and to teach what doesn't work in bullying, because again, we tried them all, and what does work to stop bullying. And it links to health caring because it's about child health.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was with the National Institute for Children's Health Quality, so NICHQ. And I remember, so we were in the pediatric space, and I was the CFO there, but I also led the parent partner program. We were ensuring that parents of children and the children's voices were being included in our quality improvement initiatives to make sure that we weren't doing it from that ivory white tower, but we truly were listening, a market-in approach, really listening to the people that were going to most be impacted. And we were looking for funding in certain areas in certain ways. And there's so many folks in healthcare said, well, on a dollar, pediatrics is 6 cents on the dollar. We're not going to invest in children 6 cents on the dollar. We can get a better ROI. Again, I was CFO. We can get a better ROI if we focus in other areas. And it just blew my mind. Yeah, I get it logically from a short term. If you're really looking at short term ROI, logically, financially only with just that lens, okay. But we're talking about bigger things here. We're talking about our children. We're talking about our future. And if you want to put it in financial terms, we're talking about the health of our population as they age. And so there's some additional linkage there with healthcare. So I try to do what I can to really help children and do so with my family. And again, other amazing people in the community in this space.
Well, such a powerful reminder for all of us. I'm a parent. My daughter's in 8th grade. I've had to deal with the bullying more peer-to-peer. It's just rampant. My wife's a teacher. She deals with this a lot. But what I think is powerful is you've taken this experience with your son and you're really making a long-term impact. And I think it's so powerful that you've brought him involved in it. So you're really taking this and making a movement from it, and you're just beginning, it sounds like, on it.
We are. So my son, he actually started a podcast called Strength Through Vulnerability, where his keen focus was helping other children and then young adults, especially males, but everybody, be able to recognize then and of themselves that they need help. Mm-hmm. And then to have the courage through their vulnerability to go and seek and get that help. Mm-hmm. So my son has a counselor. He has a psychiatrist. He's getting the care he needs. And he wants people to recognize it's brave to ask for help as opposed to a weakness. And if we all, again, going back to that mirror, if we can all look in that mirror and say, I'm really lovable and I can be loved and I should be loved, and I have some opportunities and I need help to address those opportunities, we'd all be in a better place.
I love what I'm hearing with your son. We had a few weeks ago a licensed clinical social worker on, Kathy, and one of the takeaways that I got from her presenting was that we do so well when we're involved, like volunteering, like the fact that your son's doing this podcast, helping others is such a really strong indicator for his mental health. So that's really good. I didn't realize how important it was until the research and data that was shared by the clinical psychologist was just, it's really powerful. We do a lot better when we get involved in volunteering and helping others. So it's kind of like no duh, but anyway.
I love everything you just said, but what specifically I wanted to call out was you talked about the research, and that's just it. So again, I was a finance guy. I ran an analytics shop. I also, I love, and I try to love all. And when we marry those things, the evidence with the emotions, we can do special things together. And like you said, and engage in the process itself. My son actually led our proof of concept TB Kid Youth Sports Camp, and it was incredible the impact this program had, program had on these children. And in fact, so our themes were, it was a 3-day program, were build, how to build oneself up and build up others, include all, so that all know they belong, not just think they belong, but know they belong. And then reflect on all the goodness and reflect on the opportunities that we still have before us. And real quick, Michael, I remember it was the 3rd day, and I saw a father on the sidelines of the basketball court, and I walked over and I was talking about the program, and he thought it was strictly a basketball program. And then I found a little bit more about it. Now his wife knew exactly, but he had been traveling, I believe. And so we talked about it, and his eyes really opened up when I mentioned include. He says, now I get it. His daughter, and I'll make up a name, Lisa, came home after the 2nd day, connected with a friend, and he overheard them talking. And Lisa, who he said to me had not found her voice yet, said to her friend, I felt excluded when you did X, Y, or Z. And he said they had this incredible conversation where they're both crying. They end up hugging it out. And he said she hadn't shown her voice. I hadn't heard her voice in that way. And so I am so sorry my son went through all he has. And I am so grateful and blessed he's using what he went through to help others in this way.
Yeah, this is, so great what you're doing and sharing. And I think this would be a good time, talking about your book, a little more about that. Tell us about your next book adventures and why you chose this foci and these formats and messages. So tell us a little bit about that. As we still, we're coming to the last part of the show.
Happy to, and appreciate you asking. So I actually have 2 new book projects coming out. So again, a couple more data points. About 500,000 children in America attempt suicide per year. 500,000. If you are bullied, you are 2 to 9 times more likely to attempt suicide. 55% of children, this came out of Nemours just, I think, this week, 55% of children fear bullying each and every day. So they don't want to go to school. And so what we wanted to do, and what I wanted to do, and doing a lot of this with my family, is write books for children. And so the first one, real quick, is actually a compilation. Laura DeFranco and her team have engaged these just amazing people, true carers, people who care about others, to create the Brave Kids book series. And it's a book. These are books of short stories to inspire our future world changes. So it's about highlighting bravery and courage. And again, vulnerability is actually being brave. And so I have one chapter. All of us have a chapter. In that book, I have one chapter. And it's focused on the love, the agape love between 2 friends, a girl and a boy. And one is being bullied, and how he is being supported by this young girl, and how together they're facing bullying. Mm-hmm. And that's a chapter book that's being written for the parents to read to the children. So nice. And it's been an incredible journey. We have book partners or writing partners, and I have this amazing writing partner, Julie, who has written her chapter on grief, and her husband had passed away, and how she is working with her own daughter, and she's telling the story about going through that grief together. And it's just brilliant. So it's an incredible book, and it will be an incredible book series. So that's one. And then what we wanted to do as a family, and something I have never done, was we wanted to do a picture book. And then we said, well, wait a minute, we have so many different stories here. Let's create a series. And so the series is called The Light. And the intention of that series is, let me say it this way. So growing up, I loved comic books. I loved superhero movies and shows, and more recently Marvel and all that. But Michael, there was always something that just struck me as a little off. And it wasn't until literally, I probably like a year and a half ago, I recognized what it was. What we're doing with superheroes like that is we're taking agency from our children and putting it on someone else. We're becoming, we're offloading our own superpowers. So the Light book series, the intention is to help children find the light or the divinity within themselves. And so to be able to, and sometimes what that means is being vulnerable and asking for help. And so the first picture book in that series is about body dysmorphia and about, and it also includes bullying. So it connects into some of the other things we're doing. And then future books is going to be about child abuse. It's going to be about belonging. It's going to be about substance use disorder and other ACEs and other traumas that children are facing. And really the intention is to, again, connect the parent with that child and using the graphics, the beautiful pictures that my daughter Samantha, she's a graphic designer. She's doing all that work through Dahlborg Designs and marrying that with a story that captures the attention and at the end of the day helps these children find their own light.
Wow. I love what you said about, I love superheroes. Everyone does. I think it's Star Wars too. I mean, it's the good, the evil, the character, the plot, but the thought that you brought up about the losing agency or the lack of your own like strength and kind of almost being beholden by that superhero and being like losing our power. I like how you're trying to bring it back and empower the youth through your storytelling and stories. It is really remarkable.
I appreciate that. And it's been a long time coming for me, again, going through my own healing journey, learning journey, and trying to help others with these approaches.
Well, we are still have some time. We're not finished yet. And this is your time here, Tom. You are Planetary Health First, Mars Next, my special guest, and it's about you and getting the word out and sharing. Are there some takeaways that have just come up in your thinking as we've been talking that you'd like to share with our audience?
First of all, thank you. Again, I'm data driven. And I always think that data is not good enough, though. We need to convert data to information and information into actionable wisdom, and then make sure that we're always doing what is loving for ourselves from that agape space to others, to our systems. And it's interesting again, and I think you kind of alluded to this at the beginning. We're talking about love. Oh, it's that squishy stuff. And I started off with a physician from Harvard, who recognized the power and importance of love and quality. When I think about on the other side of that, the recent World Economic Forum, it was Jack Ma, from Alibaba Group, so a multinational technology conglomerate, and he was talking about IQ, and then the emotional intelligence or EQ, and then he talked about the quotient of love. And I was blown away. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Let me see. What's he talking about? How are we defining love quotient? It's the person's ability to be kind and loving to self and others. I'm like, perfect. That's it. Why is Jack Ma talking about this? And what he said, and again, he's in the technology space. He said, a machine does not have a heart. A machine does not have a soul. A machine does not have a belief. I'm like, yes. And so he's talking about the humanity. And when we do things right with humanity, and some years ago, I was quoted about technology in healthcare. Technology is phenomenal. Technology is incredibly important as a tool to enhance human connection, as a tool to enhance healing, not to replace love and compassion and empathy and kindness. And he's saying the same thing in all his technology adventures. So we're not machines. We're human beings. We have hearts, we have souls, we have beliefs, we have intrinsic value. we care, and we love. And so the way I see it is, as leaders, we're blessed with the opportunity to ensure our people not only feel seen, but are seen. That they're not only heard, but they're understood. Not understood from the place of what's the phrase people like to say now? Don't listen to reply, listen to understand. What I find, however, is we're listening to understand to complete our agenda. What
Mm.
we need to do is listen to understand because we truly care and go where that patient or our colleague needs to go. You know, as leaders, we're blessed to be able to respect and honor and others and help them flourish. So, what we need, be it addressing bullying and what be it transforming healthcare to health caring, we need heart change. We need to look in that mirror, find that place in us where that love lives. And sometimes because of ACEs and traumas and others, it's been buried really, really deep. And I think it was Maya and Linsky were talking about how we put up these thick walls that prevent us from engaging our heart. We need to find a way to break down those walls and help others break down those walls, not from a place of shame and blame, but of a place of opportunity that we can leverage love and heart and all those other pieces that the research says makes a huge difference to make this world a better place.
Well, Tom, I am so glad you came on tonight. You said yes. I feel so inspired. I've been going through, I'm confessing on air, kind of a period of, a little lukewarm. My wife's been like, come on, your prayers are so whatever, and it's like, it's your strength and your power is contagious. And I just feel really convicted by your mission and vision. It's real. And so it's so needed. So I thank you personally, because I feel much more inspired by someone really walking the talk and doing the living. And, that's what we have to do. We have to surround ourselves by people that are doing it and that are positive. And otherwise, we can, we're creatures of our own habit. So anyway, I'm so glad you came here today. And everyone, we thank you for tuning in to Tom. One last thing, if you need to get Tom, what else other than your information on below? How can someone reach you? Anything you want to share?
Well, that's my cell phone right there, and that's my email. That's probably either of those will be fine. And Michael, before we sign off, I want to thank you. I learned today the work you're doing with veterans, and I've been blessed to be part of a family that has amazing veterans that just have served this country in many, many ways, and been blessed to work in VAs and connect with veterans and partner with veterans, and it's a blessing. So it's God's work, and again, thank you.
Yes, awesome. Everyone have a great evening. Until next time, my friends, have a great one.